Analysis and Explication of the Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. Everybody has to make decisions in life. You have probably been stuck between two choices many times before, not knowing which one to choose. Whether it be what snack to buy at the vending machine, what college to go to, or what answer to choose on the test. Decisions have to be made carefully, because the outcome of decisions can only be revealed after the decision is made, and there is no way to change it. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for that the passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Throughout the poem, the speaker must choose between two roads to take. These two diverging roads are extended metaphors for choices. The places these roads lead to symbolize the future caused by the choice. The speaker would like to travel both, but he must decide on only one of the paths. So the speaker looks down the roads as far as he can and describes them. This symbolizes trying to predict the outcome of the decisions, the future. The speaker chooses one road over another because it was grassy and wanted wear. This symbolizes ambition, choosing the road less people take. A decision less people take is more tempting, but also risky, like how the grassier road wanted wear, meaning the speaker is tempted by that road. Knowing how way leads on to way, the speaker doubts he will ever return, which symbolizes that it is impossible to go back and change a decision, which also means he has to be extra careful. In the last line, the narrator says, "And that has made all the difference," meaning that the decision has greatly impacted his life. The poem has a mood of suspense. The speaker can't make his mind up, and he considers both of his options that are nearly the same, making the reader curious as to which road he will end up taking and whether or not he will choose the correct road. At the end of the poem, Frost leaves the reader hanging, not clarifying whether the decision the speaker took is good or bad. This poem has a regretful tone. Although Frost doesn't write whether or not the decision the speaker made was good, the title of the poem, The Road Not Taken, indicates regret because Frost emphasizes the road he didn't take. The sigh that the speaker gives long after he already chose the road could be interpreted as a sigh of relief or a sigh of regret. However, the title could convince the reader to believe it is a sigh of regret. It is up to how the reader interprets the poem, but most people believe it's about regret. Robert Frost spent a couple years in England, where he became close friends with writer Edward Thomas. Thomas and Frost took many walks together, and this poem was intended as a small joke about Thomas's indecision he showed on their walks. Robert Frost could have also incorporated his own decision to pursue poetry in this poem. When he was young, he lived in an urban city, unlike the scene in this poem, and worked as a teacher and other various jobs, but he felt that poetry was his calling, and this poem could be about his ambitious choice to be a poet. Frost's background evidence supports the idea that the poem is encouraging ambition or encouraging people to take the road less traveled instead of being about regret. To show that the decisions both seem equal, Frost uses the words fair, same, and equally, which make the readers more curious as to what road the speaker will take, since they are so similar. Having similar roads makes choosing one of them more difficult as well, because it's harder to tell which one is the better one. Frost uses the words leads, doubted, sigh, and diverge to give the idea of a decision-making process. The diction in this poem is not complex, and the imagery of nature in the poem gives the reader a great mental picture of a literal decision between two paths. This allows the reader to easily analyze symbols and metaphors of making a decision from the literal scene of the poem and focus on the theme.
The next poem is called Acquainted with the Night by Robert Frost. I have been one acquainted with the night. I have walked out in rain and back in rain. I have outwalked the furthest city light. I have looked down the saddest city lane. I have passed by the watchman on his beat. and dropped my eyes, unwilling to explain. I stood still and stopped the sound of feet, when far away an interrupted cry came over houses from another street. But not to call me back or say goodbye, and further still at an unearthly height, one luminary clock against the sky proclaimed that time was neither wrong nor right. I had been one acquainted with the night. Theme. The theme of Robert Frost's Acquainted with the Night is that loneliness can be depressing and hard to get out of. As in a poem on line 3, Robert Frost tried to outwalk the furthest city light at nighttime, but he was unable to get out of his depression. He also passed by a watchman who, if he tried to seek consult with, could help solve his loneliness, which is shown by the blue arrow. But being unable to express his feelings, he dropped his eyes and was unwilling to explain. On another night, Frost heard a cry from a distant house. He stopped at the sound, having a drop of hope that the cry was for him, but unfortunately it wasn't. Symbolism. Throughout the poem, Robert Frost uses the night as a motif. His acquaintance with the night symbolizes his familiarity with depression and loneliness. The night, having a gloomy and depressing quality, effectively expresses the bleakness of having a lonely life. Robert Frost views his life as if there's only night and there's never any daytime or happiness. Because he always has such a pessimistic attitude and only looks at the depressing things, it is very hard for him to look at the bright side. In the poem, he was too exhausted to even explain to the watchman what happened, and was sad because of his inability to get out of his solitude. Literary devices. Tone/mood. Tone. The author has a hopeless tone because the words "I have," shown by the 2 arrows, have been used repeatedly. The author shows that he is stuck in depression in life and that nobody cares for him. Robert Frost tried to solve his loneliness as he walked out of the rain and walked out of his problems, but he failed and took it out and he came back into the rain. The mood of the poem is gloom, shown by using rain in the night as a setting. The night, having a usual connotation of darkness, gives the mood a dismal feel. The rain gives the mood a grim feel as the author is also in a bad mood. Diction/imagery. Diction. The author used words like rain, cry, and against to express the discouraged feeling that the author feels failing in an attempt to fix his distress. The repetition of the words "I have" show that the author is communicating to us that he tried countless numbers of times, in the meantime experiencing different situations, like looking at the saddest city lane and hoping for a cry saying goodbye. But in the end, he failed to solve his depression. The author used imagery of the night and the rain to emphasize how he is annoyed and depressed since he is unable to escape his misery. Author background. Robert Frost wrote this poem to tell a summary of his life events. Throughout his life, he constantly tried to achieve success. Most of the farms he bought and worked so hard on to maintain failed and had to be sold. He married Eleanor Miriam White, but she later died of heart failure. They had 6 children, but 3 of them had serious mental breakdowns, including a son named Carol, who committed suicide. Robert Frost tried many attempts in his life to produce some happiness, but in the end, his hard work was not paid off. He was stuck in depression and self-doubt after he outlived all of his family members but 2. He tried to get out of his state of depression, but he couldn't.